everybody, and welcome to McLean Church. I'm Megan, and I serve on the worship team here. We are so glad that you've decided to worship with us today. Whether you are listening online, watching on TV, or listening on the radio, be sure to click the connection card button during the online service or on our website to let us know you're here and how we might serve or pray for you this week. We have some great events coming up for you to connect with others and have some fun. Ladies are loving the gathering on Monday evenings. If you haven't participated yet, it's not too late. Just come to our Edinboro location at 6:30 p.m. on Mondays and enjoy a relaxed outdoor atmosphere with fun activities, authentic discussion, and so much more. For the fellas, there are 2 guys' nights scheduled this month, on August 3rd and 17th. Guys of all ages can compete in axe throwing, eat some great food, and engage in fellowship with other men in our community. This is a great way to connect with old friends or make some new ones. And finally, if you are grieving or know someone who is, we have 2 important events coming up. First, our Loss of a Spouse seminar is scheduled for Monday, August 30th at noon in person at our Edinboro location and at 6:30 p.m. online. Then, Grief Share, which is a 15-week small group for those experiencing loss, begins on September 13th. You can attend this group in person or from the comfort of your own home. All of the information about the Loss of a Spouse seminar and Grief Share is available on our website or at griefshare.org. If you want to stay up to date on these things and other events, like midweek outdoor worship, teen get-togethers, young adult gatherings, and more, just go to mcleanchurch.org or download the MC mobile app, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Now, let's worship together.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, McLean Church, and welcome wherever you are right now. Let's lift up our voices to our Heavenly Father.
We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung up on that cross and He rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars, but now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place, and we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise.
There are many answers to the question, why do we worship? But one of the simplest is that we worship because God is worthy of our praise. In Romans 5, Paul reminds us that while most people wouldn't be willing to die, even for a righteous person, God sent Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. This incredible demonstration of love is just one of countless reasons why our God is wonderful and worthy of our praise.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am
Remember to plan ahead now for Erie Gives 2021, which will take place on Tuesday, August 10th. During this day of online giving, the Erie Community Foundation will match a percentage of your donation to McLean Church. You will hear more about Erie Gives from Senior Pastor Brian Kelly in a few moments, and all of the details are available on our website or at eriegives.org. Our mission at McLean Church is to eliminate barriers to give people access to Jesus Christ, and we appreciate you partnering with us in this effort. It's easy to share your tithes and offerings from anywhere you are. Just tap the Give button during the online service, on our website, or the MC app. Thank you again for your generous support of the work of McLean Church.
Well, hey everyone, welcome. And no matter when you're viewing this or where you're viewing this video from, we're so glad you're a part. We are airing this video the last weekend of July or the first weekend of August of 2021. We're actually recording it in a thunderstorm, so if you hear some thunder or rain, that's what's going on there. But again, no matter when you're viewing this or where you're joining us from, we're really glad you're part of what we're doing as we're looking at an ancient text, an ancient record we call the Bible, trying to learn from this document how to make better sense of our lives today. Just a couple of updates for you before we come to the text that we're going to look at this week. First of all, a huge celebration with our congregation in Union City this week. As many of you know, we've been in the Union City area for well over a decade, have a wonderful congregation there right in the heart of Union City. And for the past number of years, we've been leasing the building that we've been using for worship space in Union City. This past week, we closed on the purchase of that building and that property, assuring that we are in Union City to stay. And we are so excited with our congregation there and for the impact that building will continue to let us have in that community. Also want to mention a word about Erie Gives, which is coming up here in a few short weeks. If you've been around the Erie area for a while, you know this is a wonderful opportunity for our community to come together to fund a number of very important things in the Erie community. And this year, our church is again participating in Erie Gives, and we have a goal of raising $20,000 this year for a couple of very specific purchases. We are in need of upgrading a number of our staff computers. As you can imagine, especially this past year with everything being driven online and virtually, technology has been really important to us. We've got a number of computers that are very much in need of an upgrade. And we also have some continued upgrades that we need to do at our Edinburgh facility, specifically replacing some exterior doors that are really in poor repair. And the total price tag for what we'd like to do bumps up around $20,000. And so Erie Gives Day would be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to contribute toward that goal. And here's the deal with Erie Gives. Maybe you're in a place that you're not able to give regularly to the church. But once a year you could make a contribution on Erie Gives Day that would really help us out. Or maybe you're in a place where this year has been a particularly good one for you financially. You have some extra resources. You can make a little extra contribution that would make a real difference. Remember, Erie Gives donations have a matching portion through the Erie Community Foundation, so we'll actually get more than you give. And a wonderful opportunity again on that day, not only to help our church, but to help a number of wonderful causes in the Erie community that are really doing good in our region. Please look through the Erie Gives website for the different organizations that are represented there. And again, if you can help us out toward that goal of $20,000, that would make a real difference for us. This past month, our church family has experienced a number of very tragic losses in our church family. And today I want to talk for a minute about a God who grieves. A God who grieves. We've been looking for the past few weeks at some of the Jesus stories that originate in a part of the Bible called the New Testament, and specifically the portion of that part of the Bible called the Gospels, 4 biographies of the life of Jesus. And we've been trying to look at those stories through fresh eyes and with a fresh lens, trying to set aside maybe some of what the past 2,000 years has added to those stories, to try to recapture some of their original essence, to try to get back in touch with what Jesus was really teaching in his moment of time and in his cultural setting. And one of the stories that we encounter in the Gospels, in these Jesus biographies, is a story of a friendship that Jesus develops with 2 sisters and a brother. This family of 3 that live together and provide a home that is a very dear place to Jesus' heart, a place that we sense he's visited on more than one occasion, and friendships with these 2 sisters and this brother that seem to be very deep in Jesus' life. Of course, if you've read some of the Gospels before, I'm talking about Mary, her sister Martha, and their brother Lazarus. We don't know a whole lot more about these 3 individuals from the Gospel records. There's a few things that we can infer from the data that's given. But what we know is that these 3 people are very dear friends to Jesus, very, very close to him. Probably safe to assume that they were close to him in age, that there was a generational affinity between the 4 of them. And again, we know that Jesus is in their home on more than one occasion. Well, in one of the gospel accounts, the Gospel of John, we read a very tragic and moving story about the death of Lazarus, that this dear friend of Jesus dies. And when Jesus interacts with Mary and Martha around the death of their brother, we learn a lot about how God views our own human grief. And we're taught through the example of Jesus, I think, a lot about how we process our own emotions around this area of loss. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to read a portion of this story of the death of Lazarus and the interaction with Jesus around it. I'll make a few comments as we go along the way through the passage, and then I want to talk about what the story teaches us about how we process and deal with our own grief and with our own losses. So I'm in the Gospel of John, which is the last of the 4 Gospels, or the last of the 4 biographies. It's not only last in placement in the New Testament, but it's likely the last or the latest written biography. I'm in chapter 11, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the story up midstream. If you'd like this week to go back and read the story in further detail, start at John chapter 11, the first verse, and read all the way through. I'm going to pick things up with verse 17, where it says, "When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days." Now this is significant because we know in first century Jewish tradition there was this notion that upon death the soul hung around the body for a period of 3 days and then departed on the fourth. So what the author is saying here is that Lazarus is really dead. There's an element of finality here in verse 17. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany, which is where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus live, Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. This is just a little hint, probably of the social status of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They live in Bethany. It's sort of a suburb of Jerusalem. It's a couple miles away. And yet many people have come from Jerusalem, which is the center of first century Judaism. Many people have come from Jerusalem to mourn and grieve with Mary and Martha. So these are probably people of some standing. When Martha heard, in verse 20, that Jesus was coming, she went out and met him while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." One of the things we learn about Martha in some of the accounts of her in the gospel records, particularly in Luke's biography, is that she seems to speak her mind, and here she says what was on everybody's mind. Jesus, if you would have been here earlier, this would have not happened. My brother would not have died. Where were you, Jesus? Why weren't you here? But even now, she says in verse 22, I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside and told her privately, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Once again, the two sisters voice what is so often on our hearts and minds in the midst of loss. Where were you, Jesus? Where were you? Where are you, God? If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Verse 33, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. Jesus began to weep. When Jesus goes to Lazarus' grave, when he sees the sadness on the face of Mary and the others who are gathered there, he's deeply moved in spirit, the text says, and troubled. And then Jesus weeps. God grieves. It's amazing in the history of interpretation of this passage, even to the present day. Some, I'm sure, well-meaning commentators go to great length to give spiritual explanations for why Jesus cries. Jesus weeps because of the people's lack of faith in him. Jesus weeps because of sin in the world, which has caused this death. Jesus weeps because people don't believe in his ability to raise Lazarus from the dead. Jesus weeps because his friend has died. God grieves because his people are experiencing loss. I love in the text that Jesus has no need to tie this situation up into a neat package or put a pristine bow on it. If you read the rest of the story, you know what happens next. God, through Jesus, raises Lazarus from the dead. Another resurrection in the biblical text happens. Lazarus is brought back to life, and later in the gospel records we'll get reference of that this is the Lazarus that Jesus brought back from the grave. We know what's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And Jesus, in this moment of time, embraces the grief of his friends and embraces his personal grief. Because the reality of life is that life is filled with loss. And life sometimes really, really hurts. And grief is the natural, appropriate, and even good response to the pain that death produces inside of us. Jesus, in this moment, he validates the reality of human suffering. He validates the emptiness and hurt that every one of us has experienced when we've faced loss. Jesus validates and joins with all those who ever have and all those who ever will mourn. Jesus embodies for us a God who grieves. And because grief is so painful, so difficult, there's a great tendency to want to try to avoid it, to run from it. And the example of Jesus in this text teaches us that we shouldn't do that. Instead, we should embrace our grief. Because grief at its core has some wonderfully transforming characteristics about it. And I want us to think briefly today about 4 things that grief produces in us, 4 things that happen when we grieve. And if you find yourself in a moment of grief right now, you'll I'm sure, readily identify with these ideas. The first is that grief always realigns our priorities. It always realigns our priorities. In my position, I have the holy privilege often of walking with people through deep suffering and deep loss. And one of the gifts those opportunities give me is that it always causes me to see my life in such clearer focus. It helps me see in those moments what really matters and what really doesn't. I can be so consumed with something so petty, so selfish, so insignificant in the broad scheme of things. And then I'm invited into someone else's suffering. I'm made aware of someone else's loss. I experience loss in my own life, and suddenly all those things that mattered so much to me a minute before, they just don't matter anymore, because when we're talking about life and death, life gets really clear in those moments. And we need those moments, don't we? Because it's so easy to get consumed with the trivial. It's so easy to get consumed with the things that really don't matter. And when we're invited into an experience of grief, when we go through the suffering of loss, life, priorities, matters of importance get very clear very quickly, don't they? Grief realigns my priorities. Grief also forces me to embrace the mystery and the uncertainty of life. We don't have all the answers. We don't have it all figured out. Even with our faith, there are things we don't know and don't understand. And it's easy for us to become religiously arrogant, thinking our system ties everything up neatly and there's an answer for everything. Note, Jesus didn't have an answer for the sisters. Twice he's asked, "Why didn't you show up?" And Jesus remains silent. Could it be in that moment that perhaps Jesus doesn't even have an answer? We talk in both Jewish tradition and Christian tradition about the book of Job as an explanation for why there is suffering in the world. Well, the book of Job is no such thing. Job doesn't explain anything about that question. Job explains how we ought to respond to the mystery of suffering. It doesn't give us an explanation for it. And one of the things that's often missed in this wonderful narrative about a suffering human being is that Job never understands the backstory. He never knows or hears what the reader is led into as they read the narrative. And that's an important dimension to the story, because the authors of Scripture, at more times than not, are left shrugging their shoulders and wringing their heads, as unclear as we are about why some of the tragedies that we experience in life happen to us. The more we grow in our faith, the less black and white we become about every situation, and the more aware of the grand mystery and the grandeur of God in that mystery we become. And the more okay we are with saying, "I don't understand. I don't have the answers. I can't make sense of this situation." And isn't it fascinating in this passage that Jesus does not give a discourse to the sisters on why this is happening, or what the plan of God will be through this, or how this is going to neatly resolve. Jesus just cries. Jesus just weeps. And for every time we feel compelled to defend God or give a rationalistic explanation for why the bad things in our world are happening, the example of Jesus in John 11 tells us we ought to close our mouths and drip tears from our eyes. Grief forces me to embrace the mystery of life, the mystery of suffering, the unknown about the pain and the loss that this life brings. A couple other things. Grief points me to a greater reality beyond the present. Grief points me to a greater reality beyond the present. In Jewish understanding by the first century, and certainly in its infant emergence within Christianity of the first century, there is this understanding that there is more to life than this present life. That this life is not all there is. And to be very honest, the biblical record is pretty limited in its explanation of what is beyond this life. There are sparse images, ideas that are communicated about something beyond, but it's clear that the New Testament writers, they're not definitive on what exactly the life beyond this life looks like. What they are clear about is that it is good, that it is very good, that it is somehow life embodied in the unmitigated presence of God, a life embodied in pure love. And the best we can do is try to use images and metaphors to communicate what the splendor of that must be like. So in the book of Revelation, we have streets described as paved with gold. We have a beautiful garden with a tree in the middle of it. We have descriptions of worship around the throne in heaven, people in the presence of God with nothing in between. But to be clear, these are limited images and metaphors of something that is so great and so grand that human words can't describe it, that our human explanation couldn't even begin to grasp the bliss of what is beyond. And Jesus points the sisters toward that. I am the resurrection and the life. There's something more here. There's something beyond. And Jesus will, in a sort of an anachronistic action, bring that reality to be in the person of Lazarus by raising him from the dead in a moment of time following this. But in the moment of grief, in the moment of Jesus weeping, what Jesus is doing is he's holding out this hope that in my grief sustains me, that while I might not understand exactly what is beyond this life, there is something beyond. There is something more. Death is not the end. There's something beyond this life. And it is very, very good. A fourth thing that grief does for us, if we'll let it, is that it challenges us to live in the moment. It challenges us to make the moment matter. Many spiritual greats of the past and present have talked about the importance of living in the moment. Life is in the now. We tend so much to live either in the past or in the future, but life is here. It's this moment of time. It's this interaction with this person. It's how I respond in this present situation. It's the joy I embrace in this moment. Life is in the now. And grief always brings me back to that truth. Grief always brings me back to a focus on the present, where I say I can't have tomorrow again, or I can't have yesterday again, and I don't know if I'll have tomorrow. But I do have now. So what am I doing in the now to make the world around me a better place? To love God by loving the people around me. What am I doing in the now to embrace the joy of this moment? What am I doing in the now to make that joy a reality for other people? Again, I can't relive yesterday, and I don't know if I'll have tomorrow. But I have this moment. Am I living it fully and freely? In the episode we read, Jesus doesn't resolve the sister's grief. He doesn't resolve his grief. He just lives in it. He enters it personally, and he enters it with his friends. And yes, I know as the story continues that Jesus radically reverses the whole situation, but it's also clear from the story that this is a one-off. This isn't how it regularly works. Jesus is trying to demonstrate what's happening in the bigger picture of time and in God's bigger redemptive plan. Jesus knows it's not going to work that way for you and for me. And he doesn't allow it to work that way for him in that moment of time when he stands around the grave and he cries. May the example of Jesus from this story challenge us to embrace our own grief, may it challenge us to willingly and gratefully enter into the grief of others. And may it produce in us a deeper and greater love and appreciation. That we serve and live in relationship with a God who grieves.
As the Spirit was moving over the water, Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. As the Spirit was moving over the water, Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. And come down. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, You're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will feel me. Come down. Spirit, when you move, you'll make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will feel me. Oh. As the Spirit was moving over the water, Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. As the Spirit was moving over the water, Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. Fire and wind, come and do it again. Open up the gates, let heaven on in. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. Fire and wind, come and do it again. Open up the gates, let heaven on in. Come rest on us. Come rest on us and come down. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me. Come down. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. So come down. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me. Come down. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me. Oh, oh.
Thanks again for joining us today. Next week during our online service, we will celebrate communion, so be sure to have some juice and crackers or bread on hand. We will see you in person at one of our locations or right back here at McLean Church Online next week.